You don't work at Area 51 unless you know how to keep your mouth shut. That's something they make real clear right from the start. I signed a dozen NDAs, sat through hours of briefings, and still never got the full picture of what went on behind all those locked doors. I didn't care. I was there to do my job, get my paycheck, and go home at the end of each shift without asking questions. I'm a medical technician, trauma certified, clean record, no family ties. The perfect kind of employee for a place like this. Most nights were quiet. We had a small team down in the level 2 medical bay. Just me, a night nurse named Eva, and a rotating on-call physician. We'd patch up scraped knees and minor accidents. Every now and then, someone from one of the upper sectors would come in with burns or radiation exposure, but no one ever explained how it happened. We treated the injuries and kept our heads down. That night started just like any other. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the air smelled like bleach and cold steel. I was in the break room, halfway through a protein bar and flipping through an old paperback I found in the Lost and Found, when I felt the first tremor. It was subtle, like a heavy truck had passed overhead. Only problem was we were deep underground, and there were no trucks down here. I stood up, glanced at the ceiling like I'd be able to see anything, and waited. Nothing. A few seconds later, the light above me flickered once, then steadied. I could still hear the low hum of the ventilation system. Everything seemed okay. Still, I had that crawling feeling at the back of my neck, like something was just a little off. I headed back toward the main medical bay. Eva was leaning over a desk, scribbling something in a logbook. She looked up when she heard me and gave a half smile. "You feel that too?" I asked. She nodded. Thought I was imagining it. We both stood in silence for a moment. Then the intercom crackled to life. "Emergency alert. There's been a breach at Area 51. Something has escaped. All personnel stay inside and wait for further instructions." The message repeated again. Same voice, same warning. Ava and I looked at each other. "What the hell do you think that means?" she asked. Before I could answer, we heard something slam against the far wall, loud and sharp, like metal on concrete. We both jumped. I rushed toward the source of the sound, and Ava followed behind. As we turned the corner into the main hallway, we saw the security door at the far end struggling to shut. Its mechanical arms were twitching, the steel barrier jerking in and out like it was trying to seal, but something was blocking it. Then the door slammed shut all at once, echoing down the hall. A second later, the elevator next to it dinged open. Two soldiers stumbled out, one supporting the other, who was bleeding from the chest, his uniform soaked in deep red. They didn't say a word, just pushed forward, trying to get to us. "Grab the gurney!" I shouted. Eva rolled it out from the wall, and we helped the wounded man onto it. His eyes were wide, and he was gasping like a fish out of water. The other soldier collapsed against the wall, holding his side and breathing hard. "What happened?" I asked, already cutting away the wounded man's vest. He didn't answer. His skin was ice cold and slick with sweat. Underneath the blood, I could see strange marks, dark bruises branching out like veins, forming a weird pattern across his chest. I'd seen burns before, but this wasn't that. More soldiers started pouring in over the next 10 minutes. 5, then 10, then more than a dozen. Some walking, some barely conscious, all of them in rough shape. Our quiet little bay turned into a war zone, shouting, blood, moans of pain. It felt like we were in the middle of something huge, and we had no idea what. Then they brought him in. He wasn't like the others. The stretcher they rolled in had a black quarantine tarp over it. 2 guards in hazmat suits wheeled it straight past the others and into isolation room 3. I followed. The tarp peeled back, and I saw a man, maybe mid-30s. His body burned badly on one side, the skin warped and discolored. But it wasn't the burns that froze me in place. It was the way his veins glowed, not bright but noticeable. a faint green shimmer pulsing beneath his skin like bioluminescence. I'd never seen anything like it. "Where'd he come from?" I asked. One of the hazmat suits looked at me. I couldn't see their face, but their voice was low and tight. "Cold storage unit. He was exposed during the breach." "Exposed to what?" They didn't answer. I watched as they hooked him up to an IV filled with some kind of glowing blue liquid. No label, no dosage information, just bright, unnatural color dripping into his veins. Eva came in behind me and saw the same thing I did. Her face went pale. "Are we supposed to be in here?" she asked quietly. "I don't know," I said. Outside, the lights flickered again, and then the base went dark. The lights died all at once. Not a flicker, just darkness. The kind that eats everything around you. For a few seconds, the only sound was breathing. My own, Eva's, the man on the table, shallow and raspy. Somewhere behind me, one of the soldiers let out a soft groan, followed by a clatter as someone knocked over a tray. Then, the emergency backup lights kicked on. Dim, red, and useless, casting long shadows that danced across the walls like something alive. "Generator should have kicked in," Eva whispered beside me. I nodded but didn't say anything. We both knew this wasn't just a power outage. This was bigger. The intercom kicked on again, this time with static drowning out the voice. "Emerg, breach, stay inside, unknown organism, avoid contact." Then silence. No repeat, no reassurance, just a garbled warning in dead air. That's when the man on the table moved. He hadn't made a sound until now, not even when they'd inserted the IV or cleaned his wounds, but suddenly his back arched violently off the bed and his eyes shot open. I jumped. Eva let out a soft yelp. His pupils were blown wide, no whites left, just swirling green and purple like oil on water. His mouth opened, but instead of screaming, he let out a low, throaty hum, a vibration that made the metal tray beside him rattle. I stepped forward to check his vitals even though my hands were shaking. The monitor was offline, so I leaned in to listen to his chest. What I heard made my blood run cold. There was something moving inside him. It didn't sound like breath or a heartbeat. It was slithery, like something wet shifting around under his ribs, almost rhythmic, almost alive. I backed away slowly. "Ava," I whispered, "get the doctor. Now." She nodded and rushed out of the room. I was alone with him now, the strange man who shouldn't be conscious. His head turned slowly toward me, his glowing eyes locking on mine. Then he smiled. His lips cracked as they stretched, dried, burnt skin splitting open to reveal blackened gums and 2 white teeth. And then his chest moved, not with breath, but with pressure, like something was pushing outward from the inside. The door opened behind me and I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was Dr. Hensley, still pulling on his gloves. "What the hell is going on?" he barked. "I think he's..." I stopped short. The man had gone still again, flat on the bed, eyes closed, like nothing had happened. I thought he was moving, and his chest, it sounded like something was inside. Dr. Hensley didn't respond. He walked over, grabbed a stethoscope, and placed it against the man's chest. He listened for a moment, then another, then his brow furrowed. Without saying a word, he grabbed a syringe from the counter, clear liquid, unlabeled, and injected it into the IV line. Almost instantly, the man's breathing slowed. His muscles relaxed. "What was that?" I asked. "Sedative." "What kind?" "You didn't see it." That phrase again. Dr. Hensley looked at me, and for the first time since I'd started working under him, I saw fear in his eyes. Not panic, not confusion. Fear. The kind that comes from understanding exactly what's going on and knowing it's already too late. He stepped out of the room without another word, leaving me alone again. I stood there, staring at the man on the table, wondering what he had been before this. A soldier? A test subject? Did he even know what they had locked away down here? The emergency lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere in the main ward, someone began to scream. I rushed out of the room. The hallway was chaos. One of the injured soldiers had fallen from his gurney and was convulsing on the floor. His limbs jerked wildly, and his skin was changing color. Patches of purple and green spread beneath the surface, like bruises blooming in fast forward. 2 medics tried to restrain him, but he was strong. Too strong. He threw one of them across the room with a single jerk of his arm. Another nurse hit the emergency lockdown button. Steel doors slammed shut at both ends of the hallway, trapping us in. I grabbed a crash cart and sprinted toward the convulsing man. One of the medics had blood on his hands, bright red, but thick and sticky like syrup. I reached for the defibrillator pads. "Clear!" I shouted, pressing them to the man's chest. His body jolted. Once, twice. Then he went still. The other medic slumped down beside me, breathing hard. "What the hell is happening?" she gasped. I didn't have an answer. The man on the floor opened his eyes. Just like the other one, his pupils were gone, replaced with a swirling mass of unnatural colors. He let out a strangled gasp, and something shot out of his mouth, a thin, vine-like tendril, wet and wriggling. Everyone screamed. I scrambled back, slipping on the blood-slick floor. The tendril whipped around like it was searching for something. It curled around the leg of a nearby gurney and pulled itself forward, dragging the man's body with it like a puppet. More tendrils burst from his arms, his neck, even the stump of what had been his left hand. The room erupted into chaos. Someone pounded on the sealed door. Another tried to call for help, but the radios were dead. The lights flickered again. When they came back on, more soldiers were convulsing. One by one, their bodies began to change. Tendons snapping, bones shifting, skin tearing to make way for the things growing inside them. It wasn't just a virus. It wasn't just a breach. It was spreading. I don't know how I kept moving. Maybe adrenaline, maybe fear, maybe because if I stopped, I knew I wouldn't start again. The tendrils were everywhere now. Writhing, wet things slithering across the floor, climbing up walls, snapping at anything that moved. One lashed out at a medic's ankle and yanked him off his feet, dragging him across the tile. He screamed until something plunged into his throat, cutting him off in an instant. I grabbed Eva by the wrist. "We have to go, now." She didn't argue. We sprinted for the storage wing, ducking under a spray of shattered glass as a shelf crashed down beside us. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see what those things were doing to the bodies. I didn't want to see if any of them were still alive when it started. We made it to the side hallway just as one of the vines slammed into the wall where we'd been standing a second earlier. It twitched, searching. I hit the emergency override on the wall panel and the heavy door slammed shut, sealing us off. For now. We both collapsed against the far wall, gasping for breath. Eva had blood on her scrubs, not her own. Her hands were shaking. "This isn't a virus," she said. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. "This is something else." I nodded. "It's inside them, growing. How does that even happen? What were they keeping down here?" I didn't know, but the way it was spreading, how fast it was mutating people. This wasn't some accident. Someone had made this, or worse, found it. We stayed there for a minute, trying to breathe, trying to think. Then I remembered the patient, the one who started all of this, the man from the cold vault. I stood. "I have to go back," I said. Eva grabbed my arm. "Are you out of your mind?" "He's the source, or he's connected to it. We need to know what he is." She hesitated, then stood too. "Fine, but we're sticking together." We crept through the maintenance corridors, staying low. The emergency lights were even dimmer here, flickering red and barely enough to see by. The halls echoed with distant screams, but none close. Yet. We reached Isolation Room 3. The outer door was ajar. Inside it was too quiet. No alarms, no monitors, no voices, just silence. The man was still on the bed, unmoving. The blue IV bag was empty now, drained completely into his veins. His skin shimmered faintly under the low light, a sickly glow radiating from within. I stepped closer, trying to see if he was breathing. The stethoscope was gone, so I leaned in. No sound, no movement. Then his mouth opened, slowly, like something testing a hinge. From inside, I heard it again, that humming vibration, low and wet and alive. My whole body tensed. I stepped back. His eyes opened, and this time, he sat up. Not fast, not violently. He just lifted himself, as if gravity no longer applied. His feet touched the floor. He turned his head to look at us. Then he spoke.
"You shouldn't have stopped the drip."
His voice didn't sound human, not fully. There were layers to it, like multiple voices speaking at once, some deeper, some higher, some not even in English. What are you?" I asked. He tilted his head.
"I was nothing. Then they fed me."
He took a step forward, and the floor beneath his bare foot sizzled. The glow in his veins pulsed brighter, matching the rhythm of that low hum in his chest. Eva raised a scalpel from a nearby tray, shaking, but ready. "Stay back," she said. He smiled again, that awful, cracked lip grin.
"You think you can stop this?"
He raised his arm. His hand split down the center, fingers peeling back like petals. From inside, more of those vine-like tendrils began to emerge, twitching, searching. Eva lunged, the scalpel sliced across his chest, but instead of blood, thick green fluid oozed out, hissing as it hit the floor. The man didn't even flinch. He waved his hand. Those writhing tendrils lashed out. Eva screamed and stumbled back as one wrapped around her forearm. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a metal tray, and slammed it down on the tendril. It shrieked, the sound sharp and high like a boiling kettle, and released her. We ran, again, back through the corridor, down past the loading bay, deeper into the facility. I didn't even know where we were going anymore. I just knew we couldn't let that thing follow us. Behind us, the intercom crackled to life again. Different voice this time, frantic, human. "Quarantine breach in Sector C. Evacuate all non-essential personnel. Termination protocols are now authorized." Termination. They were going to kill everyone left. We rounded a corner and found ourselves in an armory. It must have been a back route, unauthorized for medical staff. But I wasn't in the mood to follow protocol anymore. I grabbed a fire extinguisher. Eva found a stun baton and a sealed med pack. "This won't stop that thing," she said, voice flat. "No," I said, "but maybe it'll slow it down." The door behind us hissed, then a slam, then footsteps. Not running, not stumbling, walking, deliberate. He was following us. I peeked around the edge of a shelf. He was glowing now, fully. Veins lit like neon wires under his skin. His mouth was open, breathing hard like he was overheating. And behind him, dragging along the floor, was a tangle of writhing vine tissue growing from his spine. It pulsed with each step, spreading, reaching, then it lashed forward. I slammed the shelf down in front of us, metal crashing against tile. We bolted through the emergency hatch at the back of the room and kept running. The whole facility was starting to shake. The walls groaned, ceiling tiles cracked. Something deeper was waking up, or breaking out. "This thing's not just escaping," I said. "It's growing." Eva nodded, breathless. "And I think it's still hungry." We couldn't tell if we were going deeper into the base or heading toward the surface anymore. The signs on the walls were useless. half of them flickering, the others smeared with blood or melted from heat. Still, we moved. Our steps were fast but careful, always listening for that low hum or the slick sound of vines dragging across the floor. The deeper we got, the worse the air became. It smelled like copper and rot, with an undercurrent of something chemical, like burned plastic and spoiled meat. The ventilation systems must have gone down. The air was hot and heavy. It clung to our skin, made our clothes damp, and filled our lungs like we were breathing through wet cloth. At the end of the hall, we reached a security door. This one had a handprint scanner and a numeric keypad. "I don't have clearance for this," I said, half expecting it to lock us out instantly. Eva stepped forward and placed her hand on the scanner. Nothing happened for a second. Then a soft beep, followed by a green light, and the door slid open with a hiss. I looked at her. She shrugged. "I used to work level 4 before they reassigned me down to medical. Never revoked my access." Inside was a small surveillance room. Multiple monitors lined the walls, most of them static, but a few still showing live feeds. I walked up to one and leaned in close. The feed was from BioCell 7, whatever that was. The room was completely overgrown with what looked like thick, knotted roots. The floor had cracked apart, and vines had overtaken the ceiling, crawling across the lens of the camera as if they could sense they were being watched. Another feed showed a hallway we had just come from. There, in the center of the frame, was him, the man from the cold vault. No longer just a man. He was taller now, at least a foot more than he had been. His body was stretched unnaturally, spine curved forward like it was too heavy for his bones. The glow from inside him had intensified. It bled out through his pores, casting green and purple light on the walls around him. And he wasn't alone anymore. Two more figures stood behind him, once soldiers, now something else, their bodies twisted and fused with the same writhing mass. You could barely tell where the person ended and the growth began. "They're multiplying," Eva whispered. "No, they're converting," I said. She didn't respond, but I could see it on her face. The same thought had already taken hold. We're next. I moved to the control panel and scanned for a map. The emergency schematics were still loading. Slow, probably on backup power, but enough of it came through to give us a rough idea of where we were. "Service elevator," I said, pointing. "If we take this corridor and loop past Containment Lab 3, it leads to the old cargo lift. Might still work." "Might. It's the only shot we've got." We left the surveillance room and entered another hallway, this one eerily silent. No lights flickering, no vines on the walls, just a long stretch of concrete and pipes overhead, some still dripping condensation. The silence was worse than the screams. About halfway down, Eva stopped. "What?" I asked, spinning around. She pointed to the floor. Tracks, not footprints, drag marks, like something heavy had been pulled through. Wide swaths across the floor with smaller streaks like limbs, and they were fresh. I gripped the fire extinguisher tighter and we moved forward, slower now. Every corner we turned felt like it would be our last. I kept thinking I'd see those glowing eyes again, that horrible mouth splitting open, those tendrils whipping through the air to pull us into that crawling mass. But we didn't see him. Not yet. When we reached Containment Lab 3, the door was hanging off its hinges. The frame was bent inward like something had forced its way out. Inside, the lab was torn apart, tables flipped, broken glass everywhere, and in the center a containment pod, a large, upright tank, split open straight down the middle. A puddle of thick fluid had spilled out onto the floor, green and bubbling. A single word was printed on the side of the tank. Proto-7. Prototype? Eva asked. I nodded slowly. Looks like it. We stepped closer, scanning the room. Lab notes were scattered everywhere. Most of them were soaked or shredded, but a few pages were still intact. I picked one up. The handwriting was rushed. Reaction to the cellular blend is more aggressive than expected, not symbiotic, parasitic. Begins replicating within 3 hours. Full takeover by 7. Subject's mental functions deteriorate rapidly, replaced by a singular focus. Spread. Another note. Do not introduce IV accelerants. Exposure beyond 8 minutes causes irreversible mutation. Freeze protocols only effective before Phase 2. Phase 2. We were already past that. I dropped the notes and turned toward the door. That's when I heard it, a soft, wet squelch behind us. I spun around, raising the extinguisher, but nothing was there, just the pod, the puddle, the broken glass. Then another sound, above us. We both looked up. Something was clinging to the ceiling, a soldier, or what used to be one. His body was fused to the steel supports, vines embedded deep into the metal. His mouth hung open, and from it, a single tendril dangled down, swinging slightly, dripping green fluid. The soldier's eyes opened. I grabbed Eva's arm and yanked her back just as the thing dropped. We ran, the scream behind us rising in pitch as more of those tendrils spilled out from the soldier's body like bursting arteries. They slapped the ground, pulling the twisted body forward in erratic, crawling lurches. We made it to the far door, slammed it shut, and locked the manual bolt. For a few seconds, we just stared at each other, catching our breath. I looked down at Ava's arm. She was bleeding, a shallow cut along her wrist, no deeper than a paper slice, but already the skin around it was turning dark purple. "No," I said, stepping closer. "No, no, no." Ava stared down at the cut, her expression shifting from confusion to horror as the purple began to spread beneath her skin like spilled ink in water. "I didn't feel it," she whispered. "I didn't even feel it happen." I pulled a flashlight from the wall mount and shined it directly on the wound. The tissue around the cut was starting to swell, veins darkening, thickening. The purpling wasn't just bruising, it was moving, crawling, almost pulsing in rhythm, as if syncing with her heartbeat. "We need to stop it," I said, looking around. "We need to stop it now before it gets farther in." "There's no cure," she replied too calmly. That was before. That was what they said before. But there was a note, remember? The lab notes. The freeze protocol. She looked up, eyes wide. "You think that would work? It's all we've got." I dug into the med pack we'd taken from the armory. There was a cryo spray, a small, high-pressure canister of freezing agent used for stabilizing burns in the field. It wasn't made for this, but it was something. "This is going to hurt," I said. She nodded, bracing herself. I held the nozzle a few inches above the wound and pressed the trigger. The spray hit with a violent hiss, and Eva screamed, a raw, guttural cry as the cold bit into her flesh. The skin blanched instantly, turning pale white where the freezing agent struck. The veins stopped moving. The purple halted. Her breathing was sharp and fast, but she was still conscious. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded through gritted teeth. "Yeah, it hurts like hell, but it stopped." I checked again. No new spread. The color was still frozen in place. The tendrils inside her veins looked dormant, like they'd been paused mid-growth. "It bought us time," I said. "We need to get out of here fast." The map in my head, what I'd seen in the surveillance room, wasn't perfect, but I remembered enough. The service elevator wasn't far, just a few more turns, a flight of stairs, then up to the surface, assuming the shaft was still intact. We left the lab, moving fast but careful, Eva holding her wrist, me with the extinguisher raised like a bat. The hallways were different now, warped. The vines had reached deeper into the facility, splitting walls, bursting through vents. Everything smelled like wet earth and infection. Somewhere behind us we heard a scream, followed by silence. Not a natural silence, a choked, final one, We didn't look back. We reached the stairwell, and for a moment, I felt hope. Then we opened the door. A body was sprawled on the steps, face down. At first, I thought it was just another soldier, another casualty. But when I turned him over, I saw something else. His chest had been ripped open, not from the outside, from within. Something had clawed its way out, torn through ribs, sternum, even the combat vest. His expression was frozen in a permanent scream, jaw unhinged, eyes still wet with fear. And the trail led up. "Go around him," I whispered. Ava stepped carefully, gripping the railing for support. I followed, avoiding the blood smear trailing up the stairs. We reached the top without incident. A small maintenance door with a manual release bar was all that stood between us and the service platform. I pushed it open. Fresh air hit my face. I didn't realize how stale the underground air had become until I smelled the desert again, dry, dusty, sharp with night chill. The platform was open to the dark sky, lit only by red emergency floodlights and the pale glow of a quarter moon. In the distance, I could see the chain-link fencing that marked the outer perimeter of the base. We were close. Too close for it to end here. "Elevators on the left," Eva said, pointing. We ran toward it. The shaft door was open. The platform was at the bottom, 4 levels down. I hit the call button. Nothing happened. "No power," I muttered. "Backup's dead." "We can climb," Eva said, already moving toward the maintenance ladder bolted to the shaft wall. "It's not that far." I looked into the blackness below. The ladder extended into a void of shadow, metal rungs disappearing into the dark. I didn't want to do it, but we didn't have a choice. She went first. I followed. We climbed in silence, rung by rung, each movement echoing in the tight space. The deeper we went, the warmer the air became, not from the earth, but from something else. The humming returned, faint at first, then louder. Below us, in the dark, I saw it, light, green and purple, glowing like fireflies in hell. Then came the sound, wet tendrils slapping against metal, dragging upward. He was climbing the shaft. "He's here," I hissed. "Climb faster." We descended like our lives depended on it, because they did. My arms burned, my legs ached, but I didn't stop. Then Eva slipped. She cried out, one hand losing grip. "Hold on!" I yelled, reaching down. I caught her wrist just in time, but her arm, the infected one, had warmed. The frost had worn off, and the color had started to spread again. "You have to let me go," she said, calm in a way that made my chest tighten. "No, don't say that. You know what's happening. You've seen it." Below us, I heard him laugh. Not loud, not maniacal, just a soft chuckle, like he knew. I looked down. His face was half human, half something else. Jaw split, eyes gone, replaced by glowing pits. And from his chest, like a horrible flower blooming, sprouted writhing tendrils. Eva looked at me. "I'm not going to become one of them." Before I could stop her, she yanked her arm free. "No!" She fell past me, screaming, not in fear, but in fury. As she plummeted, she reached into her pocket and pulled the cryo spray. At the last second, she jammed it into the thing's chest and pressed the trigger. The shaft lit up blue. A blast of frost exploded outward. Then everything went silent. I kept climbing. Tears blurred my vision. My throat burned. But I kept going. At the bottom, the platform waited. I crawled onto it and collapsed, staring at the door. I was alone now. But I wasn't safe, because the vines were still growing, and I could hear movement above. I didn't know how long I lay there on the bottom of the elevator platform, staring at the steel door, heart punching against my ribs like it wanted out. Minutes? Seconds? Time felt stretched thin, like the air around me, pulled taut and ready to snap. Eva was gone. She saved me. Saved everyone still left, if anyone still was. That final burst of cryo had stopped him, at least for the moment. I saw it hit. Saw him freeze mid-movement, vines locked in place like twisted roots caught in a winter storm, but that didn't mean it was over. The glow still pulsed faintly in the shaft walls. Small, soft tendrils twitched on the floor like dying insects. The infection wasn't just inside him anymore. It had spread to the base, and maybe beyond. The elevator controls were dead, so I pried open the maintenance panel and triggered the manual override with the flat end of a scalpel I'd pocketed. The hydraulics groaned to life with a wheeze and a rumble. The platform shuddered and began rising slowly, the gears screeching like a wounded animal. As I rose, the shaft revealed its damage. Cracks along the walls. Glowing vines embedded deep in the concrete. Some of them dead, others still twitching. Patches of green bioluminescent sludge pulsed like low heartbeats. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a thing anymore. It was becoming a system, a network, a living organism that had used us to break out of its cage. When the platform reached the top, I forced the access door open with everything I had left. The hinges screamed, but it gave way, and I tumbled out onto cold, hard concrete. Above me was the night sky, real sky, stars, wind. The open air felt like the first breath after almost drowning. But it was short-lived. Across the tarmac, the base was burning. Not with fire, but with light. Whole sectors glowed green from within. Vines had broken through the roof of the south wing. They waved in the wind like grass underwater. The fence line was bent inward. Guard towers had collapsed. Vehicles were overturned, abandoned. I staggered forward, half walking, half dragging myself toward the command tower. It was the only building still intact, standing tall like a single tooth in a mouth of rot. When I got closer, the doors were open. No guards, no alarms, just the constant buzz of broken lights and static on the radio channels. Inside, I found bodies. Most of them looked like they never had a chance. Chests exploded outward, faces frozen in expressions of pain and confusion. Whatever got them, it happened fast, and one of them was Dr. Hensley. He was slumped over the main terminal, hand still reaching for the emergency beacon control. His badge was smeared in blood, but I could still make out the clearance code. I pulled it off his coat and scanned it at the console. It beeped. The screen flickered to life. Final protocols displayed in bold red letters. Containment failure confirmed. Final strike option enabled. Authorization required. Beneath that, one button. It glowed orange. Sector purge. Initiate. I stared at it. If I pressed it, I'd be sealing the lower levels. Everything down there, whatever was left, would be flash frozen, locked in stasis by sub-zero gas injections. If it worked, the infection would die, or at least stop moving. If it didn't, it would all keep spreading. Ava had tried to stop it. She gave everything to stop it. I wasn't going to let that be for nothing. I reached forward and pressed the button. A siren blared, not the panicked kind from earlier. This one was calm, final. Sector purge in progress. Vacate primary zones. Sealing in 60 seconds. I turned and ran, out the door, across the tarmac, toward the east gate where the emergency tunnel led to the perimeter. I didn't stop to think, just ran until my legs screamed and my lungs burned. Behind me, I heard it. A deep mechanical thoom as massive doors beneath the base began to close. Then a rushing hiss as cryogas burst through the lower levels. Frost spilled from the cracks in the concrete. The vines that had reached the surface twitched violently, then turned black and brittle, snapping in the wind. The lights dimmed, and finally, the base went still. I collapsed against the fence line, watching the towers fade into silence. The stars above were still there. The desert wind was cold and dry again. The moon hung low, like it was watching me. I stayed there for hours. Eventually, a black SUV pulled up on the dirt road beyond the gate. 2 men in suits got out. They didn't say a word, just opened the door and waited. I didn't argue. That was 6 weeks ago. I'm not in Nevada anymore. I'm not even in the country. They moved me to an undisclosed site for debriefing. I signed more papers. I sat in more rooms. They told me what to say and what not to say. They gave me a new name, a new identity. And they told me it's over, that the purge worked, that nothing made it out. But I don't believe them. I know what I saw. That thing in the vault. It wasn't a one-off. It was a seed, a test, a warning. And we didn't contain it. We just delayed it. My scars haven't faded. The purple under my skin still flares up sometimes, just under the surface. The doctors say it's trauma, residual inflammation. But I can hear it sometimes, at night. That hum, that same low vibration, just under the bones. I don't sleep much anymore, but I keep writing this, over and over. Just in case someone finds it, just in case someone listens. Because Area 51 didn't bury a monster. They grew one. And next time it won't stop at the desert.